Thank you. Senator Kaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. In response to an earlier question, you sort of posed a question back. What is one thing that has happened during the Trump administration that has strengthened Vladimir Putin's hand in Ukraine, mentioning that the sanctions were still in place? I just would like to introduce for the record an article dated February 28 from NBC News titled, "State Department Terminates U.S. Support of Ukraine Energy Grid Restoration."
That'll be entered in the record.
I was in Ukraine the day after the Palm Sunday bombing in Sumy and spoke to USAID staffers who'd all been riffed. They're going to be laid off either in the middle of the summer or early September. I'm aware that that's subject to litigation, but they talked about the fact that the grant cancellation canceled a grant that USAID had in place, hundreds of millions of dollars, that has been used repeatedly to restore the Ukrainian energy grid after attacks by Russians. I could give other examples. That is the one that is most present on my mind since I was just there. Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you about the program. It's the United States Refugee Assistance Program, and this is a program that state is the manager of, but together with other cabinet secretariats, DHS and HHS. State plays the lead management role, and it is how to manage the U.S. refugee assistance programs in tandem with contractors who help the United States on that. By an executive order on the first day of his presidency, President Trump paused all refugee programs and has canceled contracts to the agencies like the U.S. Catholic Church or Lutheran Refugee Services or HIAS or Church World Services who've been resettling refugees. Those programs are paused. There's litigation about it, but as far as I know, the United States is not, or the administration has not withdrawn the executive order. So there's essentially from this administration no refugee programs for anyone except. In early February, the president announced a special refugee program for Afrikaner farmers, justified A, by some concerns about South Africa and foreign policy, but B, a claim that these were persecuted individuals. So right now, the U.S. refugee program allows a special program for Afrikaner farmers, the first group of whom arrived at Dulles Airport in Virginia not long ago, while shutting off the refugee program for everyone else. Do you think Afrikaner farmers are the most persecuted group in the world?
What's going on, patriots? Welcome back to the channel where we speak the truth, defend American values, and stand up for freedom across the world, whether it's here at home or for those facing injustice abroad. If you're new here, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and hit the bell so big tech doesn't bury our message. Let's dive in. Today, we're reacting to a video. It's a Senate exchange where Senator Tim Kaine, yes, Hillary Clinton's old running mate, decides to grill Marco Rubio over a special refugee program for Afrikaner farmers from South Africa. Now, this wasn't just a calm policy discussion. It turned into a heated, borderline ideological ambush. And once again, we saw the left exposing their double standards when it comes to race, foreign policy, and America's role on the world stage. Kaine's main beef is that the Trump administration paused most refugee programs but opened a special door for a small group Afrikaner farmers, white, Christian South Africans who've been facing brutal land seizures, farm murders, and racial hostility in post-apartheid South Africa. Kaine essentially says, why help these people? They're not as persecuted as the Uyghurs, or Afghans, or Venezuelans. You know what that tells me? It tells me that Kaine doesn't really care about persecution. He cares about optics. He cares about race politics.
I think those 49 people that came certainly felt they were persecuted, and they passed every sort of check mark that had to be checked off in terms of meeting the requirements for that. They live in a country where farms are taken and land is taken on a racial basis.
Okay. Do you think they're more persecuted than Uyghurs or Rohingyas, or more persecuted than political dissidents in Cuba or Venezuela or Nicaragua, or more persecuted than those who would be threatened should they be returned to Afghanistan by violence by the Taliban?
Well, the problem we face there is the volume problem, okay? If you look at all the persecuted people of the world, it's millions of people. They can't all come here. And we had refugee programs.
So why prioritize Afrikaner farmers?
Well, because it's a small subset, it's a new issue, and the president identified it as a problem and wanted to use it as an example. But that's different from having these refugee programs that were basically spending money to put people up in communities and accommodate them, and it was acting as a magnet. Millions of people entered this country illegally, and today the border is sealed.
Let me challenge you, and I'm just going to say for the public, if you want to understand about the, quote, persecution of Afrikaner farmers, Go look at the composition of the South African government. Since July of 2024, there's a government of national unity, and the opposition party to the ANC, the Afrikaner Party, the Democracy Alliance, is part of the governing coalition. They joined the governing coalition a year ago, and the leader of that party was given the remit of Agriculture Minister, John Steenhuisen. He is the leader of the former Afrikaner Party, still widely representing Afrikaners. He is the Minister of Agriculture in South Africa right now. I assert that this claim that there's persecution of Afrikaner farmers is completely specious. Are you aware ever during the apartheid era in South Africa did the United States establish a special program to allow South African blacks who were treated as second-class citizens in the apartheid program, a special program so they could claim refugee status in the United States?
No, because I was probably in 9th grade or 8th grade at the time.
Well, then I don't expect you to know. I'll just tell you, never has there been a special program for Africans to come in as refugees to the United States. We've allowed special programs for people being persecuted for their religion, Soviet-era Jews. We've allowed special programs for people fleeing from communism, Cuba, Vietnam, the Soviet Union. We've never allowed a special program to allow Africans into the United States in an expedited refugee status until now. Afrikaner farmers living in a nation governed by a government of national unity that includes the main Afrikaner Party. And actually, an even more right-wing Afrikaner Party is also included in the coalition government. Now, would you agree with me, Mr. Secretary, that if we're interpreting the statutory phrase, a well-justified fear of persecution, we should try to do that in an even-handed way?
I think we should try to do that in the interest of the national security of the United States.
So okay, I agree with you too. We should. Should we try to do it in an even-handed way? So for example, should we say, if you're persecuted on the grounds of your religion, we'll let you in if you're a Christian, but not if you're a Muslim?
I think that the United States has a right to allow into this country and prioritize allowance to who they want to allow to come in.
But
I think there's this
but
misstatement.
I'm going to ask you, what,
Yeah.
so a well-justified fear of persecution?
Yeah,
you
they
don't
thought
think
that their
means-
farms
you
were
don't
being
think
burned
that
down and they would
means
be
anything?
killed. I think that's a pretty good justification for wanting to come. They're
Okay.
afraid for their lives.
And should it be applied in an even-handed way? That's an easy.
No, our foreign policy doesn't require even-handedness. It
Well, wait,
requires
but
prioritizing
the
the interest of the United
statutory phrase says you are entitled to entrance as a refugee if you demonstrate a well-justified fear of persecution.
No, you're not entitled,
So
you're
can you have
allowed.
a different standard based upon the color of somebody's skin? Would that be acceptable?
Well, I'm not the one arguing that. Apparently you are, because you don't
No,
like the fact that they're
I'm
white,
just
and that's why
asking
they're
you to
coming.
say that that would be unacceptable.
no,
That
I would say that
seem
the
to be
United
a
States-
very easy thing
The United
to say.
States has a right to pick and choose who they allow into the United
Even
States.
based on the color of somebody's skin.
No
you're
one's,
saying.
you're the one that's talking about the color of their skin, not me. These
You're
are people whose
refusing to
farms were being
acknowledge
burned
that it
down and they
should
were
be
killed because of the
even-handed.
color of their skin.
Well,
Not
I'm-
because they were- Well, you've demonstrated enough because you think anyone should be allowed into this country for any reason because they met a certain
Who has
criteria.
said that?
We are going to prioritize people that come into our country on the basis of what's in the interest of this country. That's a small number of people that are coming.
But
in
you
that
said-
particular
you said
case.
this weekend that
But
there
in
would
other
be more.
cases, it's harder to vet. In other cases, it's more difficult. And by the way, the United States admits people every year. 1 million people come to this country every year legally. 1 million
And
people
now
a year come to this
there
country
is one
legally.
group
No
of
other
people
country
that
in the
have
world
an
is nearly as
easy
generous.
pass into this country. For the first time, this administration has said Afrikaners get an easy pass and refugee programs for the remainder of the world are shut off. And you can't say to the American public that we should apply this statute in an even-handed way.
No, I
I'm
think it should
shocked
be
at that,
applied in a
and I
way.
yield
No, you
back.
shouldn't be shocked. It should be applied in the national interest of the United States. Our immigration policy should be based on the national interest of the United States. Period. End of story. If there is a subset of people that are easier to vet, who we have a better understanding of who they are and what they're going to do when they come here, they're going to receive preference, no doubt about it. There are a lot of sad stories around the world. Millions and millions of people around the world. It's heartbreaking. We cannot assume millions and millions of people around the world. No country can. So you have to have a process of deciding who do you prioritize, who do you allow in. We do it all the time. We do it in our immigration system now under our current laws. Unfortunately, it's primarily based on family connection and not on what they're going to contribute to the society from a merit standpoint. That should be changed, but that'll require statutory changes. But the bottom line is, this notion that somehow we have to accept anyone who wants to come to the United States is absurd. No country in the world has an immigration policy like that.
And,
Why would
and
we?
no one is arguing that we should. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
You mean to tell me we can bring in tens of thousands of refugees from war-torn countries, but when it comes to a white Christian minority facing targeted violence, suddenly it's a problem? This is a classic progressive playbook. If you're white, you can't be a victim. But reality doesn't care about your narrative, Senator Kaine. Credit where credit is due. Marco Rubio stood his ground. Rubio said these farmers met all the requirements, that they were afraid for their lives, and that the U.S. has a right to prioritize who it lets in based on the national interest. And guess what? He's absolutely right. We are a sovereign nation. We are not obligated to take in every single persecuted person in the world. And we absolutely have the right to look at who aligns with our values, who contributes to our society, and yes, who we can vet and trust. Rubio nailed it when he said that not every sad story warrants immigration. You have to prioritize. And I say this. Why not prioritize those who share our Judeo-Christian values, speak our language, and won't need years of assimilation training? Kaine had the audacity to bring up apartheid, saying we never opened the doors for black South Africans under that regime. Okay, and that was then, this is now. Two wrongs don't make a right. Should we now double down and ignore the Afrikaner community because we didn't act decades ago? That's absurd. What happened in apartheid South Africa was wrong. What's happening now targeting of Afrikaner families because of their race is also wrong. We don't solve historical injustice by ignoring current suffering. Let me paint a clearer picture for you. These Afrikaner farmers are facing brutal farm invasions, racially motivated murders, government-endorsed expropriation of land without compensation. And Kaine wants us to pretend like this isn't happening because they have someone in the agriculture ministry now? That's like saying racism doesn't exist in America because Barack Obama was president. Give me a break. Here's the deal, folks. America should always prioritize its own interest. And if we do bring in refugees, let's bring in the ones who are compatible with our culture, who respect our laws, who want to contribute, not leech, who we can actually vet and trust. And when Rubio pushed back, Kaine went for the low blow, you guessed it, the race card. He basically accused Rubio of racial favoritism, said this was about giving white people an easy pass. Let me tell you something. When race is the only argument you have, you've already lost. This wasn't about race. This was about protecting a vulnerable group that actually aligns with American values. The left constantly says believe victims, but apparently that only applies when those victims fit their narrative. Here's why this matters. This debate reflects a broader battle over what kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be a country that lets in anyone and everyone, no matter the consequences, plays identity politics with people's lives? Or do we want to be a country that uses common sense, protects our national interest, and helps those who actually need and deserve it? I choose the latter. So to wrap it up, Rubio stood up for sovereignty and logic. Kaine played identity politics. The left hates when the facts don't fit their narrative. And Afrikaner farmers deserve the same shot at safety as anyone else. It's not about race, it's about right and wrong. If you agree, give this video a thumbs up, share with your friends, and let me know in the comments. Should America continue to pick and choose who it accepts or just open the floodgates for everyone? You already know where I stand. This is Conservative Chronicle, standing for faith, family, and freedom. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America.